hearing, what is commonly considered our second most important sense, just behind sight. There is beauty in what we see, a sunset, the face of a loved one, the windscreen of a League of Legends match. Being able to see the world around you in an environment with such dense visual stimuli is an important, often overlooked ability which allows for independence. But what do we lose with loss of hearing? A person can still travel with ease, read, watch, and live daily life, but they lose the ability to communicate, to connect. By being deaf, it becomes infinitely more difficult to get to know those around you. Sure, there's sign language, but how many people know sign language? If you're deaf and you go to another country, how many people know the sign language that you know? To not just talk with others, but to be unable to share who you are on the inside, your thoughts, your feelings, these things become much more your own. You may be able to be independent with sight, but you are alone without hearing. And do you know what struggling to make connection sounds like? Is that a pun? It sounds like a good premise for an anime. There are two examples of this which focus on a deaf main character. The first is the critically acclaimed movie A Silent Voice, and the other is a shoujo romance from the winter 2024 season, A Sign of Affection. Both handle the same issue, but both do it completely differently. The most clear difference between the two is that A Silent Voice has its main character meet a deaf person and explore her world and how she experiences it, all from an outside perspective. A Sign of Affection has the viewer in the shoes of the deaf person. A Silent Voice begins with how a child's imagination interprets someone as different. Shoya, when learning that Shoko is deaf, literally sees her as an alien and an enemy to be defeated. This later confounds into regret for his actions he took as a child, and Shoya sees what was wrong with what he did and how harmful the attitudes of other people are as he gains more empathy. With A Sign of Affection, or Yubisaki, there is no enigma around what Yuki is thinking and feeling, because we get to hear her thoughts. Extremely ironic considering. A Silent Voice is about trying to love yourself after you've made mistakes, and it highlights the negatives to A, bring awareness to deaf issues, and B, to help show Shoya's and Shoko's growth about these issues. It's very much a struggle in a negative environment. Yubisaki is a love story, and it's a lot more positive to facilitate that story. There's a sort of innocent naivete to Yuki which makes her very sweet, and because she has to rely on expressing herself physically, this helps showcase these characteristics more. As a love story, Yuki is finding her missing half, and what they represent is the type of person she'll become. The two main viewpoints she's presented with are Oshi's and Itsuomi's. Oshi wants to protect Yuki from the harsh nature of society which doesn't accommodate for deaf people, whereas Itsuomi wants to support her growth in the world around her. The obvious thing with Oshi is that he has some internal issues which causes him to express this desire in a toxic, controlling way, which will not help Yuki in the long run. Unfortunately, Oshi is very much an odd one out. Not just in the love triangle, but in the story's setting. Him not wanting Yuki to be hurt by a world which isn't accommodating to deaf people is a completely understandable concern, but the world they live in hasn't shown that being deaf makes you a victim of discrimination. In A Silent Voice, the struggle was constant. Shoko was not treated well by both children her own age and adults. She was bullied by her classmates, and the teachers did not care. A lot of these people were apprehensive because they were immature and didn't know how to communicate with Shoko because she was different. This quickly fell into a mob mentality where it was only socially acceptable to be cruel to her. It's sad, but it's true to real life. One character who was nice to Shoko, Kawaii, only did it to preserve her self-image of a good person, even though she bullied Shoko behind her back and was a prolific liar. Legitimately, I hate this character. And then there was Ueno, who took it one step further and did things like this, which literally stopped Shoko from being able to communicate. But that dark and dreary setting let the few people who truly cared really shine, and it in no way came easy to them. The story focused on the mistakes they made learning how to interact and treat Shoko, and the concessions they had to make in order to accommodate Shoko to make her fit in their lives and to fit into hers. In Yubisaki, the world is kind to Yuki. Everyone she meets is nice to her, and while I think it works for the whole rom-com positive theme the story is primarily about, and that's what it is first and foremost, I think in doing so it undermines the issues that surround being deaf, especially when compared with A Silent Voice. In Yubisaki, everyone is nice to Yuki, and at face value, I do believe it. Everyone is nice. They're not apprehensive or unsure of themselves on how to interact with her, but in contrast to A Silent Voice, Yuki's friends and even her family don't accommodate her. Everyone is friendly with one another and no real big problems arise, and instead instead of it making me think that these problems aren't just being focused on, it's like they don't exist. The biggest deaf-related issue that Yuki faces throughout the series is her not being able to find a job, but there's not really much screen time placed on that. It's very much Yuki gets rejected from a job and then she shakes it off pretty quickly. She's only able to find a job because the owner knows some sign language, which as a solution is completely believable. I just feel attention is being pulled away from the idea that wider society isn't equipped for integrating deaf workers, and Yuki could be feeling a lot of frustration from that. But because she never dwelled on why she wasn't able to get a job, it gives me the impression that there isn't a problem to be addressed, even though Yuki only got a job essentially out of pure luck. Now, the positive interpretation of this is that Yuki could be seen as very secure in herself, which is super healthy, and unlike Shoko, who bounced from school to school, Yuki very early on got into a school tailor-made for deaf children, which may have nurtured her to be ready for how society would treat her. But I still think the world around her has issues that, due to Yuki's positive attitude, get swept under the rug. The reason I am primed to negatively interpret the wider world is because I'm British. No, it's because the series has actually given me reason to be primed. In the first episode, we see Yuki's mom and their relationship, and they seem to be on very good terms and love each other a lot. And that's basically the only time we see the mother, which is fine because this is a story about Yuki's romance. And then Yuki drops this line. This made me do a double take. I was absolutely shocked that Yuki's mother, who most likely is the person closest to Yuki at this point in the series, is unable to communicate with her daughter in the way that gives Yuki the most vocabulary and nuance to do so. Now, there could be millions of reasons why Yuki's mum isn't fluent in sign language, which isn't her fault. We never see Yuki's dad. Maybe Yuki's mum works multiple jobs to earn enough to offset any setbacks from Yuki's disability, such as going to a school specifically for deaf children. Now, that's an assumption. For all I know, there is little extra cost in Japan to accommodate such needs. The point is, there could be lots of reasons why Yuki's mother hasn't learned where it isn't her fault, but the series provides no explanation. And once again, Yuki is just fine with it. At the beginning of the series, Yuki isn't in frequent contact with her old schoolmates who are fluent in sign language, and no one outside of Oshi knows sign language in her college, and he barely talks to her. So it's like, who does Yuki talk to? To me, even if her mother literally does not have the time to learn sign language outside of some basic signs, Yuki could justifiably feel some resentment in that regard, and A, that would be some good empathetic drama to feed into the story, or B, since the mother is so lacking in the story anyway, why specify that she isn't fluent in sign language? It changes nothing in the rest of the story if she does know sign language to an articulate degree, and it helps show how much she loves her daughter if she did. So I guess this goes into a question. If you know a deaf person, is this the norm? Do parents just not learn sign language even if their child was born deaf, and they go the extra mile to make sure they grow up cared for? Because I can understand her mother not learning if she neglected Yuki. Some people don't want to acknowledge a disability, so don't take the steps to accommodate it. The short film The Silent Child is a prime example of this, but that isn't present in Yubisaki, and it doesn't have any negative consequences, like Yuki isn't angry about it at all. Even if her mother was too busy to learn sign language because she was the sole breadwinner of the house and had to work more in order to provide Yuki an education which supported her disability, even in those circumstances, I would still expect some justified resentment on Yuki's part that her mother can't talk to her in the way that comes most naturally to her, when toxic masculinity down the road did. Because Yuki doesn't get angry about this, I get angry about it for her. In my mind, the people who should be at conversational level of sign language are her friends, namely Rin. Yes, Rin writes notes for her, but I can't think of any other examples of people truly accommodating her needs. The only ones who defend Yuki's boundaries and make constant accommodations for her are her romantic counterparts, Itsuomi and Oshi, and obviously they do it because Yuki is more meek, so they feel the need to step up. But when Itsuomi is making these accommodations before Yuki's other friends are, it makes their niceness to her just feel so half-arsed and surface level. And this leads me on to my next point. Accommodation for Yuki's condition is commensurate with romance. And I think that's fucking weird. No one properly knows sign language in this show. Not Yuki's mother, not her friends who can hear, no one. Except for the men who love her, Oshi and Itsuomi. From a storytelling standpoint, it shows they are more committed to her and are able to connect with her in a deeper way than anyone else in the world. How romantic. Ew. I think this, conceptually, is gross. The way it just devalues every other relationship with Yuki for the sake of the shoujo romance bond. Learning sign language is equivalent to love in this show. And maybe you see that as sweet, but I cannot turn my eyes away from the implication of like the 5 minutes of screen time her mother got and how she specifically doesn't know sign language fluently after making sure Yuki was properly cared for in her childhood. To me, Oshi and Itsuomi are the only two people who meet the bare standard that everyone who wants Yuki in their life should reach. Do they go above and beyond that standard? Yes, absolutely. I am in no way saying that if you want to be friends with a deaf person, you need to be fluent in sign language. But learning a bit is in no way crazy. When I learned Rin knew absolutely zero sign language as opposed to even just a bit, I was astounded, especially as she took the time to care for her in their lectures and spent time with her socially. But I completely buy that writing and lip reading is the primary method of communication for a deaf and non-deaf person. No issues. But zero sign language knowledge when you've actively decided to have this person in your life is insane to me. Itsuomi is the one who brings up the sign language camp, and Rin agrees to it, but it didn't occur to her to do anything beforehand. Even Oshi decided to learn just so he could insult Yuki, you know, because deaf people don't have it hard enough. Giga chat. The use of gatekeeping knowing sign language to just the people who are romantically linked with Yuki doesn't make their bond more special in my eyes. It just makes every other relationship she has worse and makes me question their intentions. This video would be half the length it is now if the other characters knew sign language. There were other ways to show the special bond between Yuki and Itsuomi and Yuki and Oshi, and they actually already do it. When Yuki has a proper conversation in sign language, it is a lot more intimate. I also enjoy how the intimacy changes between Yuki and Oshi compared with Yuki and Itsuomi. When Oshi and Yuki talk in sign, it's translated as that echoey dialogue, similar to how internal monologues work. Do all characters lack a brain and that's why their thoughts echo in their heads? It's nice to see Yuki being able to fully communicate with someone in a way that's as natural for her as it is for anyone else to just talk. But when compared with how she signs with Itsuomi, it brings on a whole new meaning. When she converses with Itsuomi in sign language, it's not the echoey voices. Instead, we see the signs on the screen in a visual manner, in a way that Yuki can understand, as she can't hear. When she talks to Oshi, it's translated as audio, which is Oshi's and every other hearing person's main vehicle of communication. So Yuki, even in sign language, has to adapt to Oshi's speed, whereas with Itsuomi, he accommodates her to communicate in her language in her way. Now, I could be reading way too much into this, and this scene was only done that way because Itsuomi was signing characters as opposed to actual words, but I prefer my interpretation, so I'm gonna hold on to it. If we take my more positive interpretation of Yuki's character as correct, that she was properly nurtured in childhood to be prepared for the unique stresses she would face when becoming independent, there is quite a nice contrast between her and Shoko. Shoko is nice and polite to everyone because she hates herself. She doesn't want to be a burden to those who take the time to treat her like an actual human being, but despises the fact that she is that burden. Yuki is nice and polite to everyone because she's nice. She's just a sweet girl, perfect for the shoujo romance genre, but that kindness has to come from somewhere, and if there is no underlying hatred like with Shoko, it's because Yuki is secure in herself to not be deterred by things because she is deaf, to just think about the things she can control. She can't control if a job takes her on or not. She can't control if the reason they don't take her on is because she's deaf, but she can control actually applying to put her best foot forward, to be enthusiastic. I think that's quite beautiful, if a bit naive in some ways, but beautiful all the same. These two characters are extremely similar, and to me it feels like Yuki is just further along the same journey as Shoko. Shoko first has to overcome her internal issues to love herself before she can face the world and figure out where she fits in it. Yuki is at that point. She's sure of herself as an individual and is trying to find herself in relation to external issues, to see what type of woman she will become. This is highlighted through both Oshi and Itsuomi. Will she fit with a person in a world where she will be protected from the harshness of society and how mean it can be? Or will she stay with a man who will push her to experience as much of the world as possible, to let her feel all the raw emotion of everything everywhere, to help facilitate her growth even more? A Sign of Affection is first and foremost a romance show. Its main character is a deaf girl, and it uses the idea to push the tropes of shoujo romance really well. However, I do think in making the idea of being deaf fit into the shoujo mold, it loses some nuance. While I do think this, I value more that this series exists in the first place, as it allows people to reflect on these issues at all. That's literally what I'm doing, that's what this video is. And that it is also, before anything else, a good show. Another thing I've done is add subtitles to this video. This is almost definitely a Hail Mary, but I try to make these videos discussions. I really do enjoy reading other people's viewpoints because it highlights perspectives I haven't thought about or wasn't aware of. I do enjoy reading the comments, even the ones that just say you're wrong. Maybe I don't enjoy those comments. But I've added subtitles because I wanted to ask, if this reaches someone who is deaf or knows someone who is deaf, and you've watched A Silent Voice or A Sign of Affection, is one more accurate than the other? Was my interpretation of either lacking in a glaring way? Or did I absolutely smash it? No, okay. I probably didn't. Okay, obviously I didn't. But no, but honestly, I just wanted to add this in because I don't have any first-hand experience with the deaf community, so I'm aware a part of me was just speculating wildly with this video. I'm also hoping YouTube will do a lot of heavy lifting because I assume the people who need closed captioning just have closed captioning enabled videos suggested to them. That's all I have to say on the matter, and I don't really want to do an outro because I find they never really add much to videos, but while I'm here I might as well say thank you for watching this video, for watching any other video if you've watched them, subscribing. We recently hit, I don't know, this channel recently hit 1,000 subscribers, which, isn't a lot in the grand scheme of things, but it's a lot to me. I really do appreciate it. It's really nice. It's really sweet. So if you've watched, if you've enjoyed, even if you just watched, just thank you.